I wanted to make just a quickie here. We're not going to read any more in this, but I was mentioning the imperator being the commander in chief is what that means in the last video here. So I thought I'd just briefly, real quick, go over Deuteronomy 17, 14 through 20. And I'm going to pull it out here. And so we're in 17, starting in verse 14. Now this is before 1 Samuel chapter 8. Okay, this is in the law telling you what you're going to do if you reject Yahuwah reigning in your heart and mind as your king, and you want to set up an earthly king between you and Yahuwah in violation of the law of God. So here's what he's telling you when you reject him, what you should do in your own civil constitutions when you create these civil governments for yourself, when you're creating your own gods and carving out these images and temples and all that stuff, okay? So in verse 14 of chapter 17 of Deuteronomy, when you come to the land which Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you, you shall possess it and shall dwell in it, and you shall say, let me set a sovereign, a God, a ruling power, a mighty one, over me like all the other civil nations that are around me. Okay, so here you're rejecting Yahuwah as your sovereign. You want to make a sovereign to be like the other civil nations all around you. Civil, by the way, civilian is what pagans are. Every civilian is a pagan. Okay? Well, we can look at that on, go look up pagan on etymology.com and see what it tells you. You shall certainly set a sovereign over you. Okay, now he's laying out the rules here. When you reject him, now why I'm doing this is I'm going to show to you that all these people that think the United States is ordained by the Creator are nuts. And I can prove it to you by the Constitution, because it violates these laws. So when you reject Yahuwah and you want to create your own civil government with its own sovereign power, it says, you shall certainly set a sovereign over you to whom Yahuwah your Elohim shall choose. Set a sovereign over you from among your brothers. This is the only one that the United States founding fathers on the Constitution got right. The U.S. President, Principas Civitas, Imperator, and Apotheos, your commander-in-chief, your CEO, your originator of gods, federal judges, cannot be a foreigner. Set a sovereign over you from among your brothers. You are not allowed to set a foreigner over you who is not your brother. So what else? Number 2, only he is not to increase horses. Now, he's talking about this sovereign power, whatever that is, a monarchy, a democracy, through a elective legislative body, or the three-headed hydra that the United States has. He is not to increase horses. What? For himself, nor cause the people to return to Mitzrayim, Egypt, to increase horses. For Yahuwah has said to you, do not return that way again. What does this mean? Are you telling me that who we elect to be a president of our little civil law experiment here, God does not want him to be a horse rancher? That's not what it's talking about, kids. Horses at this time, now think back in the day of Moses, what did sovereign powers need horses for? This is talking about a military. The horse was the tank and Bradley vehicle of that day. Your horse, whether it was heavy armored, heavy horseman, where the horse is wearing chainmail, or it's a horse that's got light armor and it's pulling a chariot. Like this is what he's talking about. This here, because think about this now. Return to Mitzrayim. What? This is going to cause the people, by giving him the power. This is basically, I put the note over here. No, don't give this ruling power the powers of the imperator, the commander in chief, in order to have his own standing military that he controls. Think about how much debt is created in the United States because of its massive military. Is that bringing people back into an Egyptian-style bond servitude? Yeah. Because all war, all military, is based on monetized debt. You've got to go into borrowing in order to build a huge military and finance a standing military. Do not return that way again. Do not return to the way of Egyptian-style bond servitude. And the quickest way to do that is to give this God, this sovereign power that you're creating, the power of the imperator, commander-in-chief. What's number 3? Actually, 3 and 4 here. And he is not to increase wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor is he to greatly increase silver and gold for himself. Now again, kind of like this horses thing, where in the law of God does God ban polygamy? He doesn't. He puts some limitations on it, as far as if you want to marry 2 wives, kind of a foolish thing to do, but you're free to do that in a private contract, but you've got some burdens to bear that have to be written into this contract to how you make sure you take care of all these wives. So he's not talking about polygamy here, and we can see that Jacob had multiple wives and concubines. Abraham had, a lot of these people, a lot of these old timers in the Bible that were righteous men had multiple wives. This is not talking about polygamy. Again, we've got to put this in context. This is talking about a sovereign power. So does the United States, how does it increase wives? Well, it doesn't. But so if we go back in time, when kings were to make treaties with each other, one of the things that they would try to do in order to make the treaty or contract a little more binding is to exchange children in marriage, or if it was a superior king and a vassal king making a treaty or contract, the vassal king might give the superior king a daughter in marriage to seal this treaty in blood. So really what this first part is talking about is, don't give your sovereign the power to contract you as a member of this body politic. And all treaties are contracts. Every treaty that the United States makes becomes superior law to the Constitution. So NAFTA is superior law to the Constitution. GATT, superior law to the Constitution. Why? Because contract law is superior to the Constitution. And you and your Constitution, see why? Did you in the United States Constitution create an imperator in the U.S. president? Is he the commander in chief? Yep. Violated. Didn't keep that. Does the U.S. president and the Senate, Congress, have the power of treaty making? Boom, they're increasing wives to themselves anytime they make a treaty. Didn't keep that. Not ordained by God. In fact, any written constitution, just so you know, if you've got a written constitution, are you in violation of this whole thing? Because this is a rejection of Yahuwah as your sovereign. Thou shalt have no other gods in front of, instead of, before me. You shall not bow down yourselves to those gods. So The very evidence that the United States has an Articles of Confederation and a Constitution, and every state has a Constitution, is a direct violation of the law of God. Therefore, none of it is ordained by God, but it's allowed because you're free to make these stupid choices. Okay, what's this? Number 4 was, nor is the sovereign to greatly increase silver and gold. Is God talking? Abraham was incredibly wealthy. Jude, all these guys were incredibly wealthy. Is this about personal wealth? Again, it's talking about a sovereign power. How does a sovereign power greatly increase its control over a money supply? No power of a central treasury. All of the monetary power should be within the individual. No golden calves. That's your golden calf, your golden statue at the center of your city-state was your central bank, your central treasury. Do not give this sovereign power the power over a central treasury, the power over to regulate and control the monetary supply. You need to keep that power in your own hands. Okay, so what's next here? The 5th one. And that's kind of this whole thing here. And it shall be, when this sovereign sits on the throne of his reign, that he shall write for himself a copy of this Torah, these instructions, this law, in a book, from the one before the priests, the Levites. And it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, so that he learns to fear Yahuwah his Elohim and guard all the words of this Torah and these laws to do them, so that his heart is not lifted up above his brothers, so as to not turn his people aside from the command right or left, so that he prolongs the days of his reign, and he and his children in the midst of Israel. In other words, what this is saying is, do not give this king the ability to make civil law. The only law, still, when you reject Yahuwah ruling in your heart and mind as your king, and you want to put an earthly king between you and him, that king has no law. Don't give him any lawmaking powers to make civil human law. He has to write out this law, study it. This is still the law for the nation. Again, did the United States do that? Or did it create a legislative body called the Congress? Does every constitution of the state create a state legislative body to make civil law? Thanks for playing. No lawmaking power. This is the only law for the nation. So on every count other than the foreigner, the United States got it wrong and went the way of Babylon and Rome and Egypt and every other pagan civil law nation from the very first one, Cain's city-state of Enoch, and whatever else was before then or around, because there were other people. This is just the story of a single family line up to a certain point, a certain group of humans. Okay? So as we continue on, keep in mind, that's why the United States is going to be following Rome and Babylon, not the Torah. Remember, in that last video, I showed you that under Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court said, hey, you abandoned that common law, which had its origins at Mount Sinai at the time of the Civil War, and civil law replaced that because that's what you chose to contract into over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. All right, take care. Have a good weekend. God bless.